Take a look at the two-pointer pattern. This just is basically, imagine you have 2 pointers, right, or 2 indices, and you're just moving them closer together. So I always feel like the best way to really understand a pattern is to actually look at a problem. So we'll read through this problem and then I'll explain it, the 2-pointer, and then we'll try and apply it. So if we go through this LeetCode problem, I'll definitely link it in the description so you guys can practice. As always, I really would encourage you do the problem. Especially if you feel like, man, I really get this. This actually makes sense. Stop. Apply what you think you understand so you can sort of see where the gaps are. Anyway, so this is problem 167 on LeetCode. Given one index array of integer numbers that is already sorted in non-decreasing order, that just means ascending. Find 2 numbers such that they add up to a specific target number. Let these numbers be index 1 and numbers index 2. Okay, so basically we're going to be returning an array, and I mean you can see here from the output as well. Return the indices of the 2 numbers, index 1 and index 2, added by 1 as an integer array. So instead of returning, for example, index 0 or index 1, it would be 1 and 2, right? So this is really important for you guys to remember that you're not going to return 0 and 1, you have to add 1, right? They tell you here, added by 1. So if it's index 0, you go 0 plus 1, which gives us 1. And if it's index 1, it would be 1 plus 1, which is 2. The test generated such that there is exactly one solution. You may not use the same element twice. This is also really important for us to remember, right? So we cannot return the same index. The number could be the same, right? So at index 0 and index 1, we could have the same value, but we can't give them the same index. So it can't be 0 and 1. I mean, it can't be 0 and 0. It has to be 0 and 1 or 1 and 2, whatever combination. Yes. So if you look at, for me, it's always really helpful if I look at the actual example. So for example, we'll get an array that looks like this. They give us the target, and this is what we get back. So looking at this, remember they said the index added by 1. So technically this is index 0 and index 1. But remember, they told us to add 1 to that, which is fine. Okay, so the 2-pointer pattern, it involves iterating through our array using 2 pointers. The whole idea is that you have 2 pointers, one at the very beginning of your array and one at the very end, right? And they move towards each other. So the one at the left, so we'll just call that our left pointer, it's going to be at index 0. And the pointer on the right, so let's call that our right pointer, is going to be at the very last index. So in this case, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So at index 3. And we're going to take the 2 values on either end. So in this case, 2 and 15, we're going to add them together to see, are they equal to, are they greater than or less than the target? So if left plus right, so if these 2 values are greater than the target value, that means that we move this down here. Why? Why does it have to go down? Well, in this case, right, our array is, it's sorted in ascending area. So we know that at the very end, we have the biggest number. At the very beginning, it's the lowest number, right? So if the total that we got from adding these 2 is greater than that, clearly we need a smaller number. On the opposite end, let me just put this. Yeah, so if it's greater than, then right moves. Whereas if the opposite is true, right? So if when we're adding them together, we found that the left side was, if the total was less than the target, that tells us that, well, clearly we need a bigger number, right? And again, our array is in ascending order, so we would have to move this here, right? So in our case, we'd go, well, what's 2 plus 15? Well, 2 plus 15 is 17. That's greater than the target, so we move this down. Then we go again, what's 2 plus 11? Well, 2 plus 11, that's 13. Again, that means that we have to move this down. Then we go 2 plus 7. Well, 2 plus 7 is equal to the target, and so then we return the indices. And just so you guys remember, it did say that it would be the index plus 1, so it wouldn't be 0 and 1, it would be 1 and 2. And I'm just going to put this here so you can see it visually. I would really recommend that you either pause the video and try and just do the actual LeetCode example by yourself, only with the information that I've given you. And then if you get stuck somewhere, watch the rest of the video. If you actually do it and get it done, I mean, you could just take a look to see how I did it. So yeah, this is what I would recommend. So now we're back on LeetCode, right? So remember, we already know what indices we're going to use, right? We need 2 of them. We need left, which we know is 0, because this is at the very beginning of the array. And then there's right, which is at the very end. And the way that we get the last index is we go, well, the length of our array is called numbers, minus 1, right? So now we have our 2 sliders, one at the beginning, one at the end. And then we go, well, while left is less than right, because remember, we can never return 2 of the same elements, so we can't say this, right? Because we can never have them overlapping. And we can't say that, so we can't say the opposite, because at some point it would mean they would have had to overlap, right? Because left would first be the same as right, and then it would be greater than right. So it has to be while it is less than. Okay, then we go, well, we need the total, because it's when we add the 2 values at these indices that we then compare our total with the target we're meant to find. So we go, well, numbers, the index of that, plus numbers, so numbers left plus numbers right. And then we go, well, if the total is equal to our target that they've given us, that means that we can return the indices, right? So left plus 1, because remember, in the instructions it said return the indices of the 2 numbers added by 1 as an integer array of length 2. So that just means we add 1 and we're expecting 2 values. Then we go right, the same thing. However, else if the total is greater than our target. If our total is greater than our target, then we go, well, right minus 1, right? Because again, remember how I explained it, that because our array is in ascending order, the biggest values we know are on the right side, while the smallest values are on the left side. That means if our total is greater than the target, we need right to be of a lesser value. So we move down the array. If the opposite is true, right? So if we go total, if our total is then less than our target, we know that all the smaller numbers are on the left side. So that means we need a bigger number. We need left, the value at left, to be bigger. So then we go, well, right has to move up. So that slider moves up so that we can hopefully find a bigger number, right? This is moving that way, and that's moving this way, right? So the reason why it has to be while left is less than is quite simply we can never have that, right? Because at some point they would have to overlap, and that would mean that we haven't fulfilled one of the requirements, which is we can never have 2 of the same element. Because clearly, if this was 15 and this was here, right, this is as far as we can go. We can never have that. And for it to do this, initially it would have to overlap, and we can't have that. So this is why we go, well, while left is less than right. The screen, let's just run it to see if we've missed anything, if we've made any errors. Okay, so that seems to be working fine. Let's submit. Right, so like this, it's going to run a whole lot of tests, and yeah, as you can see, it passed. So I do think that this is one of the easier patterns to grasp, because the whole idea is you have your left slider and your right slider. The only thing you are doing is that you're moving them towards each other. Sometimes the left has to move because of certain parameters, and sometimes the right has to move because of certain parameters. So I'm definitely going to be adding a link to this problem that you guys can try out, but I would also recommend that you do as many of these, especially the easy ones, while you grasp the concept. And then you can move on to a bit more difficult ones. But the core of this pattern remains the same. You have two sliders, you're moving them towards each other. Okay, good luck.